Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. The long A.J. Brown saga is officially over on this June 1st. The Eagles today traded A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots in exchange for a fifth-round pick in 2027 and a 2028 first-round pick. Now, I'm going to start by thanking AJ for what he did in Philly. Even if the Eagles' offense became reliant on Saquon in recent years, AJ still had an incredible 4 seasons with this Philadelphia Eagles team. He had 4 straight 1,000 receiving yard seasons, including the 2 highest receiving yard seasons in Eagles history by a single player. He narrowly missed the 1,500 yard mark in 2022. He was a key part of the Eagles' 2 Super Bowl runs in his 4 seasons, including the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 59. He was a reliable target for Jalen Hurts over the years, routinely catching the 50-50 ball tossed his way. He is a Super Bowl champion, and he will be part of Philadelphia Eagles history. And you can't really say a whole lot more about his on-field performance other than it was incredible. And the Eagles really benefited from having him on the team in these last several years. At the same time, the Eagles' offense had 2 receivers on the team for most of those years that easily could have been the number 1 receiver on any other team. And AJ did drop off a smidge towards the end of 2025. He only narrowly crossed the 1,000 yard mark in last season. And while he contributed well in his early years, the Eagles' talent and his off the field antics definitely contributed to his departure. Now, I, for one, am glad that this trade is finally behind us, especially given the off the field antics stuff. I've avoided talking about it much because it really didn't impact, up until late in 2025, how he was doing on the field. But it did bother me how the Eagles would have great games and he'd still find ways to complain. Yes, every star receiver has to have a little bit of diva in him because that's how they do really, really well. They have that competitive nature. But he'd send out a cryptic tweet or a message, and then when the media asked him about it, he would say something like, "You're taking my words out of context," but never actually give us what the context is. Bro, just give us the context, dude. The other thing that kind of irks me about this is the compensation. The Eagles are getting a 2027 fifth round pick and a 2028 first round pick. And I think that this was lowballed. A.J. Brown, just for his on the field stuff, is absolutely worth 2 first round picks. We have seen lesser receivers go for more in this offseason. So seeing him go for a fifth round anything, especially when he's going back to Mike Vrabel, who was with the Titans when they parted with A.J. Brown back in 2022, and who A.J. Brown and Mike Vrabel really have a strong relationship, is maybe a sign that the Patriots were concerned about being able to manage him. But he is going to be a signature part of that Patriots offense, unlike here in Philly. So, given that we know what kind of impact he's going to have over in New England, a fifth round anything is a bit too low for my liking. We'll obviously never know fully what went into the discussions, what went into the negotiations, but this was something I would be more comfortable if he had gone for maybe at a floor of a second or third. I think, again, fifth just is too low for the talent that he brings to any team, even if he is definitely on the older side of wide receivers. He is going into age 29. So let's talk about some implications of this trade for this Philadelphia Eagles team. The first is going to be cap related. A.J. Brown is going to cost the Eagles $40 million in dead cap. We're not going to get rid of that, but we are going to be able to spread it out among 2026 and 2027. This was one of the reasons why, if the Eagles were going to trade him, anything prior to June 1st would not have made any sense. The Philadelphia Eagles will be taking a $19 million cap hit thereabouts in 2026. The remainder of that cap hit is going to come in 2027, according to overthecap.com. So already this is a better situation than if the Eagles had gotten rid of him earlier. That entire cap hit would have had to be absorbed in the 2026 season, and the Eagles just simply don't have that kind of space, given some of their offseason acquisitions and given some of their acquisitions over the last couple of years. So this definitely makes sense, being able to spread that cap hit out. The next thing is the wide receiver room implication. And I think we all knew at a certain point that this trade was coming. For me, I was very hesitant about this trade until the Eagles traded up for Mekhi Lemon in the 2026 NFL Draft. That was not a pick that made sense without an A.J. Brown trade, simply given the talent that already exists in the wide receiver room. Now, I was not as concerned about the other receiver pickups. The Eagles have done that a bit at plenty of other positions over the last few years, bringing in really good players and then really not using them or releasing them ahead of the regular season. So I've definitely seen that happen and was not concerned about that in the wide receiver area because we knew who our number one and our number two guys were, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. But drafting the first round receiver was that turning point because now there's pressure to perform right away when you are a first round pick, and B, given the amount of talent that's in the wide receiver room already, to spend a good chunk of capital on adding more talent to that receiver room definitely doesn't make sense unless you're planning to get rid of a key part of that talent, in this case, A.J. Brown. So that really was why this was the turning point for me. This means that Devontae Smith is very likely going to be the leader in the wide receiver room, very likely going to be that number one receiver. Again, I think he's got the talent to be the number one receiver. He was asked quite a bit about leadership at his softball game earlier in this offseason.
I'm more of a lead by example guy. I don't get too vocal unless I have to, but lead by example. I would say that's my way.
So Smitty does seem ready to be the leader, but we are going to see how that pans out this season. The last implication that I want to talk about is as it relates to Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown have had a solid relationship. If you were to ask either of the two of them about it, they've had good off the field relationships. But one of the things I think that really helped Jalen Hurts was the fact that A.J. Brown was so reliable on the field. We talked about how A.J. Brown really was able to 100% of the time, or pretty close to 100% of the time, catch that 50-50 ball. And you take a look at that and you take a look at a quarterback who is still very much developing, definitely has not hit his ceiling, to have that comfort of being able to throw to a guy who is very likely going to catch the ball if it's in the vicinity of him. Those things definitely help when you've got a quarterback who is developing things like pocket presence or being able to work through your reads, to be able to have that sense there and be able to work behind an offensive line that wasn't exactly clicking 24/7, especially last season. That really helps when you have a reliable target. So, A.J. Brown not being there, is Devontae Smith going to be that same reliable target? And if he is not, does Jalen Hurts have that same reliable target or have a reliable target? There's a lot of new pieces in the wide receiver room this year, and Jalen's going to be spending, I'm sure, a bunch of time trying to figure out who he works the best with. Now, there's definitely some folks that are seasoned with this Philadelphia Eagles team, talking again about guys like Devontae Smith and even some guys who are farther down on the depth chart. But I do think that Jalen Hurts is going to have a little bit of a task trying to find a receiver that he clicks just as well with on the field as he did with A.J. Brown. So now that brings us to the ultimate question. Do the Eagles get better or worse with A.J. Brown traded? And I think that it is going to be that this Eagles team is better for A.J. Brown being traded to the New England Patriots. Yes, he is good. There is no question about that. He is a good receiver. And Howie has said repeatedly this offseason that you spend a lot of time trying to acquire players like A.J. Brown, not get rid of them. So there's that element to it. But I do think that A.J. Brown needs to be on a team where he's going to be the star of the show. And the Eagles have had that for a while. The Eagles had him in that sort of star position. But then the Eagles brought in Saquon Barkley and the offense recentered. And the Eagles have been really reliant on a run game with Saquon as the running back. And with the off the field antics that AJ had, I think a lot of that was coming from that place where AJ Brown is needing to be in the center of the offense. And the fact that the Eagles' offense is no longer centered around A.J. Brown having stellar performances contributed to some of the off the field stuff. And the Eagles don't have a lot of tolerance for that. Remember, this past season, A.J. Brown had a meeting with Jeffrey Lurie where he reportedly promised to not complain about being on the team anymore. And that really led to a lot of the stuff that occurred where he would not make media appearances, or he would start sending out cryptic messages, or he would make some offhanded comments when he was doing some Madden gaming or things like that. The Eagles have not had a lot of tolerance for that, and those things did tend to drop off a little bit after that meeting. But without those off the field distractions for this Philadelphia Eagles team, that's cutting dead weight. And when you cut the dead weight, that allows you to refocus the team on what is the goal. And Jalen Hurts is going to be the first person to tell you that you need to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing for this team is delivering another Super Bowl for this city. So for the Eagles, at least to move forward together as a team, this is going to be a move that I think is going to make them better, even though it may cause some short term pain in terms of being able to find some solid wide receivers. So we'll see how all of that happens, but there's no more speculation around A.J. Brown anymore. The speculation train is over. A.J. Brown has officially been traded, and we can move forward, hoping that the Eagles are ready to go for this upcoming season. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Should A.J. Brown have been traded? What are your thoughts about this trade? What are your thoughts about the compensation for this trade? There's a lot to talk about. Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage, and if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com, or you can join the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles.